Right. Good afternoon, North Seattle College. Glad everyone could be here. This is one of many budget presentations for North Seattle College. The district is having a series of presentations that will cover the entire district budget, but we wanted to make absolutely sure that this meeting focused on the North Seattle College budget and gives you an opportunity to ask questions and to seek clarification on the budget. So this is a joint effort between the executive team and the business office. And we're really excited about that because we're rebuilding capacity in the business office, and you'll hear more about that later. So welcome everyone. This is going to be recorded, or it is being recorded. And as always, Tony will send out a link to the recording and the necessary PowerPoint presentation. For those of you who don't know, I'm Chemene Crawford, president of North Seattle College, and it's good to see all of you. Next slide, Marie.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marie Angelis. I'm the director for EDIC here at North, and I'm going to be reading the land and labor acknowledgement. On behalf of North Seattle College, we acknowledge that we occupy the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish peoples, Duwamish, Muckleshoot, Tulalip, Snoqualmie, and Suquamish, continuing to honor their traditions, culture, history, and customs. We ask that we take this opportunity to thank the original caretakers of these lands, airs, waters, relatives, both human and more than human, who are still here today. We ask that participants consider their responsibilities to the people and land, both here and elsewhere, and to stand in solidarity with Native, Indigenous, and First Nations people and their sovereignty, cultural heritage, and lives. We acknowledge the forced and unpaid labor of enslaved peoples that is the foundation of the U.S. and has not been compensated. It is our collective responsibility to critically interrogate these histories, to repair harm, and to honor, protect, and sustain this land.
Thank you, Marie. Okay. Here are just some things to expect. I hate reading slides to you, but I'm going to touch on the bullets and then maybe expound a little bit. We will do everything we can to monitor the chat as we go. Keep in mind that there will also be a link provided in the chat as usual form for you to provide feedback or ask additional questions on this presentation. So if we don't get to your comment or question in the chat, submit the form, which is an anonymous form, and we'll make sure to double back and answer those questions either in the news briefs or in a separate email. We ask that we're going to have question breaks, of course, throughout. We ask that people be respectful and maintain civility. We have good news to share today, and so it warrants the appropriate response. And keep in mind that this is not about North's budget. I mean, this is about North's budget. It's not about the district budget, going back and forth here. Representatives from the district office will do a presentation at a later date. We just wanted to spend this time with you to focus on North. So that's why the change in the venue, if you notice on the invite, we insisted that North present our budget after the board approved the budget. And we'll explain more about why this happened in the specific order that it did. Next slide. Okay, here's the agenda. I will, of course, let you read that for yourselves. We do have an agenda, which is nice. And Lorene, our new business office director, will spend most of the time on many of these slides talking to you about not only the staff, but the budget process and then other expectations. And then we'll all talk about looking forward to the new fiscal year. Next slide. Okay, Lorraine.
All right, so as you might know, might not know, in July 1st, what happened is the district office they moved the budget office to them. So it's a solid line to them, dotted line to the school. Then the intent around that is to have consistency across all schools. To have consistency in reporting, consistency in this budget process, and just consistency in general. It's very similar to the HR and EDIC model that we currently hold. It doesn't take away from, it might feel like it now, but it doesn't take away from how we are here to serve you, therefore our students, because that's 100% our intent is to serve the community here at North and therefore serve our students. It just really means that I just Leela works with us. That's pretty much it. And she's great. And so anyway, anything to add to that, Dr. Crawford?
Yes, I know there's some concern about all of the consolidations that are happening. But one thing we heard as part of our accreditation process is that there needs to be clear communication and process, if you will, delineating the campus process versus campus to district process. And so we were happy that our accreditors pointed that out because we want those lines to be very clear. A true definition for a dotted line, a true definition for a solid line. Either way, these are areas that pretty much work as a background to the college's foreground, because as the accreditors mentioned, it is the institution that is responsible for meeting the conditions of accreditation, not necessarily the district office. So if we move forward with those things in mind, then it'll be even more clear that this consolidation process, again, similar to HR and EDIC, is the background to the college's work in the foreground. Next slide.
Oh, got to wait, go back. Thank you. I'd like to introduce the business office. If you haven't had a chance to meet us, I'm Lorraine. I'm the director of budget and business office. I'm starting here in February. We'll make this quick and then we'll introduce Meseret. Oh, hi, Meseret.
Hello. Hi, it's Meseret Espai. I'm on temporary assignment in the business office as senior financial analyst.
Thank you. Tim?
Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Lawrence. I'm currently interim budget analyst too at the business office.
Thank you, Tim. And Helen?
Hi, my name is Helen, and I'm working for the cashier manager.
Thank you, Helen. And I just want to say really to all of them, they've been the glue or no duct tape that's been keeping this together. They both are interim positions, so they jumped in, Tim as a student and Meseret workforce. They came in and just to help try to keep this together. So really, if it wasn't for this team that you met right here, and then of course Grant who moved on, this would not be good. So I just want to have my sincerest gratitude to these three. So thank you so much. All right. So and also potential future staffing. So this is exciting. It's potential. It's not 100% yet. We still are working with the unions and everything. Is associate director of business office and a budget analyst 4. So budget analyst 4 will replace Grant's position, and the associate director of business will be it's a new position. Right. So what happened this year? Just want to put this out there. I'm a pretty informal person. I'm really easygoing. So if you have any questions and I won't be able to see the chat or anything like that, you can raise your hand and whomever can just say somebody has a question. My mind works faster than my mouth sometimes. Sometimes my mouth works faster than my mind. So if you need me to slow down, just tell me to slow down. So just let you know. All right. So what happened this year? There's a lot of rumor going around that the budget was kind of a mess, and that's very true. It's, I would say about 90% pretty accurate in my opinion. So what happened is like certain funds were uploaded. So fund 148 wasn't uploaded. We don't know why. We looked, we're not sure why it was uploaded. So if you look in the budget, you'll see in the universal report, you'll see a lot of zero budgets. It just is what it is. But it hasn't stopped these departments from being able to support their students and make purchases. Dr. Crawford's been very much involved with that. So in the district office has been very much involved with that. We understand there's no budget and we don't know why, but it hasn't stopped the business or stopped the ability to purchase items. State allocations, this is a big one that I'm getting a little bit deeper into. And state allocations were not assigned throughout the year. So this impacts a lot of the departments, and I'll give an example, like Amy and Milena, they had zero budgets, right? It's just because what's supposed to happen in theory is we're given about 11 or could be 12 allocations from the state, basically our allowance each month. And so once we're given our allowance for certain provisos that we're in theory supposed to upload them in the budget. So you are kind of tracking. If we put $5 in, you can spend 5. If you spend 6, you only have that much left for the next month. So that was kind of an issue. So it was a mystery, like, where's my budgets? It's basically state allocations were not basically uploaded in the budget in all, but not all budgets, but in some budgets. Not a lot of faith in budgets that were uploaded. It was hard for us to track that. A lot of budget managers came to us and they said, that's not the data we put in. And again, it didn't impact the business. People were still able to make purchases and expend basically on good faith. So because we can't, just because there's a mishap, we can't stop business and can't stop serving our students. Also, a lot of institutional knowledge, budget knowledge lost from high department turnover across all schools. Just like a lot of departments, it was decimated. It was across the board. There was Leela and Lolita, basically, I think one other financial analyst too at South. And then again, Meseret and Tim helped out, but it's across the board, it was decimated. So we're all still trying to scramble, and all schools are going to be hiring as well to get staffed up. So anyways, next slide. Oh, any questions? Are we good? Okay.
I just want to make a comment in here. Lorraine's been giving kudos to everybody else on her staff, but we have to give kudos to Lorraine. I mean, she started this, what were you, 6 weeks in, 8 weeks in?
2 to 3.
Oh, okay, 2 to 3 weeks in. And yeah, and so kudos to you, Lorraine, for jumping in and, just, I would say duking it out with us, but I'm just going to say it, for just duking it out with us and helping people understand what we were facing, and also helping to see clarification on some of the concerns that we had with regards to the district process. We can't thank you enough. You just walked in and jumped right in, and so we very much appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Crawford. I appreciate it. I thought it was more of a stop, drop, and roll approach that I had. So this is the budget timeline. March 13th, literally told, and I'm like, I'm sorry, what? I was literally told, oh, we have to get the budget sheets rolled out this week. And I'm like, that was pretty much my response. But I said, okay. So I worked with Grant. Grant was actually out of the office for a couple of days. So Grant, he's the budget analyst 3. So his job is to compile budget sheets, create those. He's also an Excel wizard. So we basically had just a couple of days to put budget sheets together. That's why they were so choppy. And comprehensive sheets like this at least take a couple weeks. So grateful that Grant was able to put this together. So we met with the E team that week. They gave us the outline, what they needed. We went back to the drawing board, came back to them. We were mostly okay with what we were presenting, just based on the timeline. Also want to say thank you to the E team for really pushing back on the timeline, because this timeline was actually shortened by this timeline was actually shortened by like a week or 2. So thank goodness for that. So then we got to it. We went to the budget managers. We emailed everybody we could. We had trainings. We had an open door, open Zoom appointments. We had about 25 plus one-on-ones with everyone who was interested in it. We had 3 trainings, lots of activity in the business office, which was really nice, and everybody's always invited, by the way. So really we got to it. Everybody rolled up their sleeves, the budget managers, the deans, the E team. We all knew we wanted more time. We didn't have more time, so I really am very grateful for everybody's commitment. Some people had, one budget line, and then some departments deans have multiple budgets. And on top of that, there's even more confusion because I just started the audit of CTC budget managers like the week before. And if the budget managers are not correct in CTC, you cannot have a correct manageable budget. And there's over 25 to 30 incorrect budget managers in CTC. And I know there's still a few outstanding, and we're going to get those fixed. But there's no way to communicate. The approvals don't go to the right people, so it was just a mess. So anyways, and then April 27th, we submitted budget to district, and that was really, it's actually April, it was due on the 24th, but a few of the college presidents pushed back on some district expenses and fundings. And thank goodness that they did, because that was able to keep us in the black as overall. They really questioned the expenses district was given to us, and thank God. And Dr. Rosie, being new, she completely agreed, and they cleaned a lot of that stuff up. So that was great from the president to do that and push back and really fight for a balanced budget. So all of that happened in 6 weeks. Okay. So the budget development, and it's going to look a lot different next year. There's going to be a lot more little cubes there, just to let you know. Basically, we were told the business office, we basically grant built non-salaried, salaried, and part-time and FT worksheets. We were able to get the non-salaried and salaried out initially, and it took an additional week for Grant to build the FT worksheets, but we got those out there by the following week. So budget managers, deans, and exec, we did a lot of trainings, one-on-ones. E-team, they had a couple weeks to review, audit, and approve budgets. Not a lot of time to really deep dive, have presentations or whatever, because it was really just 2 weeks. Business office, we rolled it up after on that Friday, after we got everybody's okay. We rolled up the budget again. We have to audit everything because everything is manual, which doesn't make sense. But everything's literally on Excel spreadsheets. It's not a build in CTC. Everything is, and so there's a margin of error that's going to happen when you're doing things so manually. Then Dr. Crawford, she approved it after the district gave us the right numbers, the acceptable numbers, which was about $2 or $3 million. So it was pretty substantial. And then final roll up, Dr. Crawford and Leila and Julian presented to the board just a couple weeks ago, and they approved the budget. So that's exciting. Yay. Okay. So you're going to see some numbers. If you're not numbers people and whatever you need, just let me know. If you want to meet and I can go through this one-on-one, whatever you need, just so if you want to understand it differently, you learn differently, you see things differently, totally get it, just ask me. I'm happy to meet with you. So budget assumptions that the COLAs haven't been, the COLA amounts have been determined. In 2020, in the state allocations, so in 2023-24, all of the district got $99.2 million in state allocations. So we just got the number a couple of weeks ago for 23-24. SBCTC is giving the district and all the schools $106 million. So that's a positive. It's positive to $6.7 million. So that $6.7 million is for COLA steps that we'll talk about just a little bit briefly here in a minute. It hasn't been divided up yet. District does that. And we should be getting that hopefully by the end of the month, if not next week. So what we'll know what North will be getting that share of the pie of the 6.7, and it's gonna anything that's kind of over what the numbers you'll see. We're gonna work with the E team and how we want to put it back into our budget. So there's no, we're not going to save the money besides what we're mandated to save, et cetera. So anything, what we get out of the 6.7 is going to go in and it's going to help support these COLAs and steps and et cetera. So, and the state actually, what's so important about the state allocations and all those funny numbers that you see in our budget is anything in 001, 24J and the 08As actually have a meeting. That's what our merits and COLAs that we get from SBCTC, that's what it's based on. So it's really important, and I'm working on that now to get the right numbers in there so we get the right percentage. Because if those numbers are wrong, we don't get the piece of the pie that we deserve, that you all deserve, right? So enrollment and also enrollment projection is for a flat enrollment. So it's basically for spring 2022 through winter 23, and tuition projections include the 2.5% increase. So we are having a 2.5% increase in tuition rates. International revenue is using the same methodology. Running Start I got from Alice. So if you want to know her methodology, she can speak to that. And COLAs are approved for by the state, 8.9% faculty and 4% classified, pro staff, exempt, and non-represented. We talked a lot about any questions with that because that's kind of a big deal and that's pretty exciting.
We do have a question in the chat.
Sure.
Clarification about the COLA. Does that mean that the state is not fully funding the COLA?
Josh, you want me to speak to that? From what we understand, oh, go ahead, Josh.
Go ahead, you can start and then I'll tag
I'll
it.
say from what we understand, and I haven't read it, right? I haven't had the time, frankly, is it's 100% funded by the state. Josh?
With nuance and
Yeah,
I said
exactly. I was hoping you would speak to the
Yeah,
nuance.
so the recovering lawyer in me will kind of chime in and say, so that's 100% of what the state has on the books for our salary. So if the state says we have for state operating $1 million in salaries, I'm just using that as an example, we know that's higher. They will apply the percentage to that. So for positions that are grant funded, right? If they're local fee funded, if they are Seattle Promise, which is considered contract funded, which I realize Seattle Promise is not in our budget, but I'm just using that as an example, right? Our folks over in Trio and Anapeasy, right? Those aren't state funded. So although those individuals still get the COLA, we have to come up, we being the institution, the district, have to come up with the additional funding for those. Sometimes that's covered in our grants. Sometimes we do have to make that up in local funding. So if we have a advisor who's paid through non-state student support specialist who's paid through funding from the city, we've got to come up as a college for that funding. Same for a faculty role that might be provided by HEED funding from the city. So it's yes, but an asterisk.
And that's the funds, the 01, 24J and 08A. At a glance, I'll just give you an example. The 01, 101s, were allocated by the state to spend, it was like about $20 million. I did just a quick little drag and drop on an Excel spreadsheet, and about little 19 million and some change was in 01, 101. So, and it's just salary and benefits. So we are tracking to get as the bulk amount of what the state allocations are. So just to let you know that. But again, that doesn't support the 146 funds, like the grants and all that other stuff. Okay, good question. So also we talked, Dr. Crawford initially wanted a flat year. It's impossible to have a flat year. Flat year is, you had $5, you spent $5, you only get $5, you only can spend $5. That's impossible to grow a school with that kind of approach. And it's also impossible with COLAs, the 8.9 to 4% COLAs, new positions, unfilled positions, open positions. That's about $3.5 million just in new positions, unfilled positions, and COLAs and steps, right? So that's 3.5 over what we had last year. So that's impossibly flat. We have facilities there's gonna be an increase in facilities because if we're here more, our electricity is more, our gas is more, parking is more expensive. We need more security guards. I mean, it's just impossible because we still need to move forward as a school, but also not buy 5 pencils and 10 pencils, and nobody did that, which was very impressive, by the way, with such a short turnaround. There's nobody that had a $400,000 budget and asked for $500,000, except for facilities. But again, we needed the lights on. So that was impressive. There is a bump in travel, but thank goodness things are opening up and you have seminars to go to, you have events to go to. So they're all wins. So it was a flat budget, but it's also intended for growth. So that should be very proud of yourself for that.
Yeah, and also when we refer to a flat budget, at least from my seat, we're not talking about, as Lorraine said, $5 spent and $5 earned. We're talking about the fact that we're not requesting a tremendous number of positions, or, 5 more advisors or 5 more staff in other area. That is a growth budget, and it's still something that needs to be looked at, because just because we grow numerically doesn't necessarily mean the staff needs to grow. But what this did was make sure that we had the right positions doing the right things. And as you heard in our past budget presentations, that was the whole point of balancing the budget, the restructuring, right-sizing the organization so that we can move forward. So using the flat budget mentality, not the 5 for 5, but just saying, okay, no new bodies, but let's make sure we have the right bodies, and then we can build on a more solid foundation. And that's what you all have done. That's what the budget managers have done. And now that we're on a rebound enrollment wise, then we can truly look at growth. And you'll hear later on about rebuilding our capacity, even in this environment where we haven't added a significant amount of dollars, if at all, and mainly in the instructional area and in the student services area as well. Maureen.
Thank you. And also, I spoke about earlier, like there weren't budgets loaded, there was 0 budget lines. So like, how do we build a budget based on 0? Well, what we did is we used prior year's budget where there was a budget, right? And if there was no budget, we just used the expenses, and we use it by 25% for Q4. But just let you know, if somebody had to go over $6, right, they inputted that in the budget. So everybody, there was no major budget cuts, just to let you know. Everybody budgeted smartly, and if you budget smartly and you ask for what you need to serve our students, there really wasn't any cuts. So again, it hasn't been finalized by the Board of Trustees, but there really wasn't any cuts. So the E-team came back and they were like, thumbs up. We looked, there really wasn't any changes. So it was a win-win. Okay, next slide. All right, these are the fun numbers. This is our operating revenue. We're only going to talk about operating revenue for this presentation. To run our school, we are projecting 29 point, okay, we should be getting more than this, by the way, at least $29.1 million. This is, we bumped it up by $600,000 to assume some of the COLAs, because there was a substantial amount of COLAs and steps, because we knew we would not be getting any less than $600,000. Otherwise, we'd be $550,000 in the red. We'll be getting this money from the state. It's just not, hasn't been allocated exactly how much yet. So our tuition is flat from prior year times 2.5%. So we're at $12 million for tuition. International Running Starts is 1.3 and 2.3. So our total operating revenue is $44.9 million. Any questions on that? Okay, we can skip, we can jump. Thank you. Okay, so this is the operating expense category. Pretty self-explanatory. Salary, wages, and benefits take up really the bulk of over 50% of our expenses. Goods and service 1.7. Capital, that's not like the library. That's a whole different budget, by the way. Contractor services has gone up. Utilities has gone up from prior year just because we're here more. Travel has gone up from prior year just because we're here more. And the district transfer actually was trending towards a $7-something million budget. The president's work with district, we got it down to 5.8. And also they're going to be held accountable to let us know what they're spending that $5.8 million on. Again, Dr. Rosie is fully on board. She totally gets it. She was just recently a president as well. So our total expenses is $44.9 million. So that gives us a net gain of a little 50,000, but I won't be attached to 50,000. It's a pretty small amount compared to what our revenue expenditures are. Okay, next slide. All right, so operating expenses, this is kind of a roll-up of the numbers that you see above. These aren't new, this is not new numbers. If you notice on the bottom, it's still $44.9 million. So instruction takes up 19.8, and instructional support is 5.9, library 1.1, student services 5.4, etc. Now, if you'll notice that why is only 44, why is 44%? Actually, most of, I would say more like 50 to close to 60% is student-facing expenses. That's really what we're held to by the state. I believe it's around 50%, but these are all student-facing positions. This is just how we're asked to roll it up. Institutional support, maybe not so much, and facilities not so much, even though it does support the students. Any questions on that? Okay. Next slide, please, Sam. For Dr. Crawford.
This is why I don't do the chat in Zoom at the same time. I was typing something in the chat. So on the president's office budget, it's pretty simple. It's primarily salaries. Any resources that we receive from our North Seattle College Foundation or Community College Foundation, or as you all know, American Financial Solutions and the Seattle Colleges Foundation, some of those resources are channeled through the president's office. And we did not, using the flat mentality, we did not request additional funds or additional positions for the president's office. And so you're going to hear that messaging throughout this presentation. And again, keep in mind, that's how we're referring to a flat budget concept. Next slide.
Good afternoon, all. I'm Peter Lortz, he, him pronouns, Vice President of Instruction and Enrollment Services. Good to see a lot of Zoom faces. From Instruction and Enrollment Services, just wanted to touch on highlights, and then in reference to a theme that Dr. Crawford mentioned as well. So rebuilding capacity, as you've heard throughout the presentation, was really the focus of these two major areas of the college, Instruction and Enrollment Services, through this process. Connected to the faculty collective bargaining agreement, a heavy emphasis on tenure track faculty positions. And the ones that I noted here are actually not the entire list. We did have 2 faculty positions that started in the winter quarter. And so those will be on the books for obviously 23, 24. And then the disciplines that you see here, early childhood, parent ed, digital and graphic arts, business, math, and Bachelor of Science in Computer Science. We are in various stages of the process for a fall 23 start. And then Alice is going to talk about counseling in a little bit as well. Enrollment services staffing, so registrar, credentials, testing, that area. The theme is also rebuilding capacity. So about a year ago, HR, myself, and Dean of Enrollment Services, Kathy Rhodes, sat down and mapped out a plan to rebuild capacity for those offices. And we were able to follow through and carry out that plan a little bit this year and then heading into next year. So those areas will be fully staffed as by the time we get, knock on wood, by the time we get to fall 23 start. As Dr. Crawford mentioned, we were also sensitive to the items that came in either formally or informally that we knew we couldn't necessarily fund right away with the information that we had, but we also knew we wanted to capture so that when we can enter into some more significant budget planning during next year, that we will have a head start on those conversations. So I call that a parking lot. We established a parking lot of requested items, and I've listed here just a small handful of the items that are in that, those parking lots. So not obviously, the library resources, things like subscriptions and other resources for the library, tutoring capacity, as well as capacity in some other areas that we're relying on hourly support, as well as getting staff positions onto state-funded budgets connected to what Josh mentioned earlier. The ideal is that the persistent positions are funded with state dollars, so that when there are COLAs, et cetera, that we'll get those COLAs as well. And so we have, whether it's for lab positions or others, we also have those in the parking lot. So we look forward to a more intensive and longer budget planning process for next year, so that we can really get the conversations played out in these, hopefully these parking lot items into the budgets. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alice Melling, Executive Dean for Student Success. A few highlights to share, again, along the rebuilding capacity theme. We're thrilled to have an additional full-time tenure faculty counselor position in the budget. And Emiko Minatoya Shields started in this position spring quarter. Some additional positive news to share is that our State Board for Community and Technical Colleges Mental Health Grant was extended. It was originally supposed to end in June of 2023. It's been extended to June 2025, and that supports an additional faculty counselor position, which will give us 4 faculty counselor positions in fall of 2023. So that's really, really exciting. Another thing to be excited about is that we received foundation funding through the Equity Can't Wait campaign to fund an additional academic advisor. And with the 3 current vacant advising positions have been solidified in the 24-25 budget. So we're wrapping up right now the hiring process and on track to onboard 4 new advisors in June next month. So we're very, very excited about that. Both the fall quarter seems a long time ago, but it was just a 6 months ago that we reopened both our child care center and the Roy Flores Wellness Center. And both budgets are very, very healthy. We will continue to operate the child care center next year and continue to grow capacity. Kudos to Rose Buchanan, child care manager, for a huge lift in reopening the center after being closed over 2 years due to COVID, and for designing a sustainable model as well. Our Roy Flores Wellness Center is healthy as well. Our kudos to Director Megan Valerio, who's coordinated several rental agreements with community groups and bringing in more revenue to, again, a self-sustaining model for the center. And Megan's also initiated expanded hours in response to student input. Similarly to Pete, through these budget conversations the last couple of months, there was needs that trickled up for to put in that parking lot to further support the infrastructure and student success initiatives. A couple include additional support for disability services. And of course, we are planning on wanting to sustain our permanent support for our 4th faculty counselor position as well. So that's a brief update from student success, part of student services.
I get real quick. There was a question in the chat. There's actually 3 questions in the chat, but 2 I think are more general and overarching. So I think we should pin those. But Alice, there is one about the Child Care Center, Roy Flores Wellness Center, if they're generating profits or not. I know Dr. Crawford answered in the chat, but for those who might not be following.
Right. Go ahead, Alice. I'm sorry.
Oh, I would say yes. I mean, the reality is that they are definitely in the black with an excess, but what, as any facility requires, those excess funds will really be reinvested into the facility and or put aside for that rainy day, right? So we're not going to spend the excess, but both of them are generating excess that will have on just hold it in those budgets for when there's a need that comes up. But yes, they're breaking even and running in the black and have profits as well, however you want to word it.
Right, and I want to point out, again, the different business model that was presented. Kudos to Rose and Dr. Mary for taking that on. We asked them to look at things differently, and that's why I call it a different business model, and to come up with several scenarios as to how they could at least break even, because we recognize that it's a service. It's a college and student and staff service. And so there wasn't the expectation for them to create revenue, but to at least break even, and they've excelled beyond that. So kudos to them for that. And Laura, I see you have a question regarding food services on campus. I just talked to the micromanager or emailed with the micro market manager, and they are planning to add even more healthier food choices. I know there was a concern from the students that there's a lot of so-called non-healthy food choices, but they are planning to add additional healthy food choices. And also to answer your question, yes, Black Coffee Northwest is coming. We just cleared the contract through WFC. Thank you to Steve Hoffman and to TWE for helping that along. So we will see Black Coffee Northwest's presence at the Spring Fest later in the week. And then they're planning a full-blown opening the last week of June or the first week of July. So thank you to everyone, Josh in HR, Steve, TWE, our AFT Pro staff folks who really worked with us to clear the contract with our labor partners. You are very important to us. And so we want to make sure to get this done right. And we have. So yes, Black Coffee Northwest is coming to the old Espresso Lounge.
I see there's a couple questions from Joseph. Joseph, I'm not sure if depreciation is in the budget. I'm still focused on expenses, salary, and currently fund codes, but I can ask Leila, who is an accountant, and she would know that. I don't see it literally in the budget lines, but I'm sure it's built in somewhere. I just got to find out where the somewhere is. I'll let you all know. Also, there's another one. There's another question. Let me find it. Sorry. When you report the budget results during the year, say after each quarter, do you compare the budget revenues and expenses with the actual revenue and expenses? Then do you analyze and explain the variances? The district office does do those reporting to Board of Trustees. We definitely can do it at the business office. Also, just to let you know, you have access to that information. The university report shows budget and expenses. Tim updates this report every month. You could sort it by employee ID, employee department code, allocation, fund, accounts. So that information as far as budget versus expenses is literally at your fingertips 24/7, updated every Friday. Thank you, Tim. Also, Tim and I are working together to create a revenue university report. So we're going to vet it past some of the folks who have larger revenues. So it'll be just like the university report that you select department XYZ and then you see where your revenue is trending. I just want to run it past a few of you to make sure it's tracking correctly and etc. So we'll be doing something like that. We are eventually we're eventually going to be doing grants and things like that. They're so completely complicated. I'm definitely going to have to get that data from Lee Grubb. Her spreadsheets are pretty massive to track grants and how we use it. And I'd be happy working with Bree and Angela on that. So that's tentative, but we definitely will get the revenue going at the same time. Now, the thing is, it'd be great if you had like a traditional P&L. You have what my budget is, what I spent. CTC is not that user friendly. So I have to have time to work in Tableau to see if I can get like literally 3 to 4 reports lined up. So you can see just a traditional P&L like profit and loss. I know it's not a profit loss because we're a state school, but basically revenue, budget, deficit. We're not really, CT is not user friendly that way, frankly. Also, the thing with state budgets, and which is new to me, it's a year. We input the budget at day one. And so it's not, so all you're able to see is your budget and your actual expenses. And it's not necessarily a month over month. So you would see your budget and then like from 10,000 to 20,000. So you would have to like, it's not really a tracking mechanism unless you did your own little spreadsheet to do that. But I'm going to talk about this later, but what we will be doing is I'm working with Julie, the budget director at Central, and we're going to put a poll together to see what you all need. Some things we can get out quickly. Some things will take me and Julie working with our teams to try to get those reports out to you. So does that answer your question? Does that answer your question? I can also, I just asked the question in my own chat. And we don't budget for depreciation. This is a general ledger activity that happens between assets and equity. Those are our accounting words. And if you need more information around that, I do operations. I'm not an accountant. I do big picture budgets. So anyway, but does that hopefully answer your question? If not, you can easily email me. I can set up a Zoom with you, whatever you need. I'm happy to do that for you. Any other? Did I miss any other questions?
There's one about the changes to the rules regarding civil service positions and permanency, which we can jump to. There's some interest in it, so I'll just jump to it now, because it does kind of dovetail into this. For those of you who don't know, about 4 or 5 years ago, the state legislature passed a modification to what everybody affectionately calls the 1050 rule. So what the 1050 rule says is that for most government entities, which we are a state entity, you could only hire a temporary part-time employee in a civil service, so what we call classified position, for up to 1 year or 1,050 hours. And once they either hit a year or 1,050 hours, they could no longer be a temporary employee. They had to either go to a more permanent type status, or if they exceeded the 1050 hours or 1 year, they could petition the state for permanency, basically. With respect to higher ed, there was an exception for higher ed, which allowed what we typically called hourly employees across this district to essentially have their clock reset every year for a new set at 1050. A lot of units across the state in higher ed, especially the CTCs, relied on that for things like tutors, backup office support, that sort of thing. There were also colleges, or I should say, members of our higher institution community with the 4 years who are maybe a little more profit driven, I will say, who I will just call it what it is, used and abused the 1050 rule and essentially hired permatemps. So essentially they'd work folks to 1,049 hours and then essentially say, okay, well, you can't work anymore, come back in 7 months and we'll get you a new fresh set of hours. So the legislature put a kibosh on that and removed the exception for higher ed. Last July 1 was when everybody's clock reset one last time for any existing employee. So to the I'm sorry, I got distracted by the question, so I'll get to this. So really what it means is you can only hire a temporary employee for up to a year if they are in a role that is a civil service or what we would call classified role, right? After 1 year, they can no longer exist in that role. You can use non-permanent status under 4.5.c of the CBA if it qualifies, or something more permanent. What I mean by more permanent, that means it may be a reduced FTE position. So for those units that relied heavily on part-time hourlies, we've been working at North and across the district with with the managers who have those employees. This requires everything from crafting job descriptions to determining what's the best approach to addressing those needs. In the tutoring context, that looked at using with the existing budgets, hours, benefits, all those equations. Each manager used a different essentially approach. To Emily's question about does the change in permanency meaning sorry, I'm there, Does it make it more costly? It can. It can in the sense of not all of our folks who were hiring part-time hourly employees were paying them on a wage commensurate with what that would be for a more permanent employee, right? So with moving employees to a more permanent status, that means that they have to have an OFM classification. That salary is then dictated by the state. So if we're paying our tutors, say $20 an hour, they're all going to become instructional support tech ones. With the stepping wage progression, that there's about a $20, I think, step B, but it will go up every year. They'll go up their 2 steps and get their increase. Not all departments have made the decision to continue hiring hourly folks at a reduced FTE. Moving to a more permanent status does not automatically mean an employee will qualify for health insurance. Some units, like safety and security, has made the decision to reduce their reliance on part-time hourlies and temps, and hiring individuals who work, say, 16 hours a week and aren't eligible for benefits besides sick leave and vacation leave that are prorated, and said, you know, we're going to hire a full-timer. We're going to hire somebody on a fully benefited position. Yes, it's going to be a little bit more costly. We'll make that up in other areas and have that piece. So it is a little bit of a cost case-by-case basis. Some units did make the decision to, or did not receive increased funding, so they have to work within their assigned budget to align their staffing on the more permanent employees. So say 16 hours a week, because it's more or less of a guaranteed salary. I mean, guaranteed FTE, because then if you start reducing those hours, that's considered a reduction in hours under the classified CBA, and that therefore then you have to follow the layoff procedures. That's considered a layoff. So so some groups, some units did the math and figured out, this is my budget, this is how many hours I can staff with part-time hourlies. Other folks took funding from other areas and hired benefits eligible positions. Some folks are moving to non-permanent employment because it qualifies under the 4.5.c of the contract for a non-permanency. But this 1050 rule does not apply to positions that would not be subject to civil service rules. Student employees are exempt from civil service rules. Okay, so I think I'm caught up on that. Sorry, I want to be mindful because did we have an hour and a half or an hour? I can't remember.
Hour and a half.
Hour and a half.
All right, perfect. Okay.
Yep, we're done
we
at
can-
2:30.
Perfect. We can come back. We save time for questions at the end. If we want to talk about 1050 a little bit more, we can. I don't want to kibosh a conversation, but we do have some other slides and it impacts all the units. So I think we can kind of circle back to it. From campus ops, I am not responsible for campus ops, but because we don't have an executive director for campus ops, I get the slide in the presentation. Again, because most of our expenses are personnel based. So transitioning back to kind of the budget highlights related to campus ops, I would also put the plug in. You should have seen the email from Ruben Gonzalez, our new safety and security director. He is chairing the search for our executive director of campus operations position. So we have finalist open forums tomorrow. We have 3 candidates. We did have a candidate previously, and through various circumstances, they were unable to join us as anticipated. So we're looking to fill that position. Within the campus ops team itself and kind of the budget pieces, it's a smaller unit, right? Because we're focusing on the North specific pieces. So really that's safety and security, Opportunity Center for Education and Employment, and the micro market, because although the business budget office and facilities have dotted line reporting to this, remember they since July 1 of last year have been consolidated at the district office effectively. So with the safety and security pieces, we've institutionalized some roles. We've added some capacity there based on the recommendations of the acting Dave Finney, if you remember when he came in, and also some of the recommendations when we previously had an acting come in. So that's the addition of a program manager A role to serve as kind of a front of the house office manager / dispatch role. So our security officers can be out on patrol and out part of the community. They don't have to be in the office. So we've built that into the budget. A move the additional full-time officer to address the part-time hourly rules. So the 7th officer, less reliance on those part-time hourlies in non-benefits eligible positions with limited job security, limited opportunity for job growth. It's hard when folks who may have been in part-time roles lose that opportunity for that employment, but also we owe it to folks if we can have full-time permanent benefited positions. We should consider those. Along the same lines, this was kind of hinted at earlier, with self-support budgets generating revenue again, specifically things like parking, we're able to fix some of the budget pieces and move some folks back to those other the self-support budget. So a lot of a portion of our safety and security officers are funded by the transportation fees, right? But we had been paying those essentially deficit spending on our operating for those. So we've been able to get those realigned for where our transportation budget was supporting those. And to Pete's point earlier about kind of parking lot items, we've seen some opportunities where we've identified options for increasing support for related options. That's my wordy way of saying we're engaging in conversations about how do we get support from our partners that are co-located in the OCE&E and some of the other opportunities where folks make demands of our operations that have a financial impact on us, that the college should not necessarily be subsidizing the cost thereof. So that's kind of the campus ops overview at 30,000 feet.
All right. So what's next? So June 8th, going back to Board of Trustees for the final approval. So far, we haven't seen any obstacles with that. They were very happy with the presentation that the district gave them and that the president spoke at. They're very pleased with it. So about June 12th through the 19th, we're going to do budget uploads. Tim Meseret and I will be working elbow to elbow. We will be uploading about 2,000 line items into CTC, but we're going to be auditing it as we go. So we haven't quite created the organization structure. Nobody cares, but anyways, basically we're going to upload, then download. So we're not having this missing data as we did prior year. And also this time, even though the numbers are pretty much final, this is the time I'm doing a lot of cleanup with deans and budget managers about funds and fund codes and making sure that the state allocations are correct, used appropriately. We have the opportunity to consolidate departments. So instead of EDI literally having 5 or 6 department codes, I think they have like I think 1 or 2 now. Facilities was about the same thing. So now they have 1 or 2 now. So we're doing a lot of that work right now and cleaning up the budget. The numbers are pretty much the numbers at this point. But there's a lot of cleanup that we're doing. So we're pretty happy about that. July 5th, the budgets will be complete and ready to be published. Actually, they'll be most likely, since it's a holiday weekend, otherwise, if you really want the data before the holiday weekend, let me know. We're going to basically upload it into the Universal Report and Universal Revenue Report, and that will be the budget. July, the business office will be very busy. We're closing out this fiscal year's budgets. Basically, we're moving state allocation funds around as appropriate, and I am partnering with deans and budget managers to make sure their funds are being used how they want to be. So just to let you know, that's what we're working on. Hopefully July, August, I want to have a kickoff meeting with all the budget managers and deans and whoever else wants to join us. And I hope to have some type of quarterly meeting where we can get together and talk exciting stuff like budgets. Also October, November, the 22-23 budget will be closed out, and we should be able to have another presentation such as this around that timeline. It's usually like last 2 of them for the Board of Trustees were in November. It has to go to the Board of Trustees before we can bring it to you all. Then this year we're going to do things right or better. How's that? Do things better. we are going to be starting the budget cycle in January 2024. So we'll be starting that, we'll be starting dialogues, we'll be building the spreadsheets, all that fun stuff. All right, if there's no questions, I'll go to the next slide. We're trying to become a proactive versus a reactive department. I'm more of a planner. I like systems and processes. I'm an introspective thinker, so I'm not a very reactive person. So this whole process it takes a hot minute and some sleepless nights trying to figure out how to get that information to you all in a very comprehensive way, how to get the budget rolled up to where it's more correct. So what we'll be doing is we're going to be creating proactive systems, but also we're going to be working with you to create these proactive systems, right? Reaction never works, right? It doesn't create a sustainable business model at all. It creates chaos, it creates frustration, all kinds of fun emotions. But if we are proactive and we plan things out, we map things out, things like this, presenting budgets, we map it out, we plan it out, then it's a win-win. It's better information, is clearer information, and you kind of know what to expect. So we are currently, like I said, auditing all funds before uploading into CTC. So not only am I doing this year's state allocation funds, I'm doing next year's as well. Also, we'll be uploading the state allocations as we get it. Basically, when we get our allowance from the state, we'll be uploading it. Some departments can actually upload their whole budgets. Some of them, like high demand faculty, we can upload it. But we have to like spend down as a quarter ends. So every little department or state allocation has a nuance. But if we're not able to upload it, we'll be communicating to the deans and the business managers. This is like your overall budget, even though it may be not be spelled out for the year. But we will. I have already been partnering with some deans on this subject. In June, when we upload the budgets, we'll audit data in CTC link. So again, Meseret, Tim, and I will be auditing all data. We're going to be uploading, literally downloading and comparing our data. The budget office is fully committed to transparency, accountability, and co-accountability. I'm a big believer in accountability. I'm a very big believer in co-accountability. We're going to talk a lot about this in our kickoff, but really, the budgets are built. We need to use the budgets. We need to use the budget lines that we have and use the fund codes that we have. There's just a lot of work when we're doing a lot of zero budgets, et cetera. But again, we're pretty amenable and we'll work together, but we're fully transparent. There's really nothing for us to hide or not share with you, whatever. I'm literally and figuratively an open door policy, especially because it's so stuffy in here, my little office. But anytime that you need to meet with me about anything, you just can set it up on my calendar by using the appointment maker or walk in, because somebody's always staffed at the office except Fridays at this time. So also we'll be sending a poll out of what you need and what you would like to see, and we'll be very transparent if we can make that happen. If we can't make that happen, we'll try to give you a timeline. Again, I'm going to be working with the other budget directors to kind of create these tools, because again, we're trying to get all on the same page, have all the same reports. The next one that will be coming out, most likely this week, after I get people's some people's feedback, is Universal Revenue Report. If you see it and you get a little bit because our revenue is shown as a negative in the red and not a positive, it is what it is. We can't change it. So there'll be some like nuances we're trying to flesh out there to educate the Seattle community, or else we're very much attached to getting it right and not being right. Frankly, this is just my personal belief system. I'm not really attached to being right. I don't have a huge ego. I'm just attached to getting it right. And I'm very much attached to getting it right for our students and for you. And again, end of the day, our customers are students, right? And I'm very passionate about serving our students and being very student-centric. And this is one medium in which I can do it on. Budget kickoff. I know, exciting. Don't lose any sleep over it. We're going to be having a budget kickoff in July, August. I see some chats, but I'm not able to read it. So if there's something that you need me to answer, just let me know. So looking forward. So we hope we'll be hiring tentatively hiring these next couple of months to be fully staffed, fully on board. Seattle College will be starting the process in January, February, unlike in March with 6 weeks to go. We'll have 6 months to be able to build our budget, have those communications, have some really good spreadsheets that are not so confusing as this one was. We're going to listen to your feedback anytime you need anything. And we're gonna hopefully, and we're gonna probably have another poll on what you need to build your budget. You're welcome to let me know at any time your feedback. I'm not a defensive person. Like I said, I'm pretty easygoing, so you can let me know whatever you need to let me know. And we have learned from this process, and we're fully committed to getting continuing improvement. As Maya Angelou says, when you know better, you do better, and that's what we're trying to do, is just get better. In our 100%, my intent, my impression is this intent is to serve you all, serve the community, and serve our students. Okay. Some questions?
Well, we've answered all of the questions in the chat. You have a couple of options. The form link has been posted in the chat, and we will respond to those once received. Or you can type in the chat right now, or you can come off of mute and ask your question.
Yeah, ask me anything. I pretty much, if I don't know something, I'll look it up for you. So pretty much, feel free to ask me anything that you like. Pretty transparent person.
I'm really encouraged by the work that the business office is doing now that we're rebuilding capacity. I know for many, the CTC link conversion was very confusing. Lorene actually had a slide in the presentation of all the codes that we know work. And we took it out because it was micro print, but in her next presentation on budget and CTC link, she will be providing more of that detail so that we can all better utilize this tool that we've been given and really have no choice to use. So again, thank you to Lorene and her staff for really leaning in and working with us, teaching us, and helping us move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Crawford. And talk about CTC link. It's a very nuanced system. It's not user-friendly. So again, when we're asking the poll, think of CTC links. Think when you go up there, you see the queries, you stare at the queries, you can't find the right query, you shut down CTC link and you move on with your day because it's so frustrating. That's the information we want to know. So what do you bring up that you need to know? And those are the reports that we're going to try to build for everybody. So it's a very nuanced system. It doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
You're welcome, everyone that says thank you. You're very welcome.
We are so happy that Lorene chose us and we chose Lorene.
That's right.
It was a process. We did good, right?
You did. You did okay.
All right. Well, thanks to everyone. If there aren't any more questions or nobody wants to come off of mute, again, you can submit your questions via the link in the chat, which should now have the right cadence. All right, we're good. Again, Tony will be sending this out once transcribed and sending the presentation out once transcribed, ready to go, the recording, the PowerPoint. So again, thank you to everyone. And if there's nothing else, I believe we are done.
Oh yeah, and did everybody catch that we have a balanced budget?
Oh yeah, that part, right?
We like went way past that, but yeah, we have a balanced budget.
Right, we have a balanced budget and are actually expecting some additional revenues that we were not able to garner before the cutoff date. Yay.
Yeah,
so that will help us.
Great job to the community,